right, welcome everybody to this episode of O365Eh. Continuing with our co-pilot theme, today we're going to have back Kevin Kieller, who's a partner and co-founder at Enable UC. Welcome, Kevin. Good to talk to you again. I know you've been on the podcast before, so we really appreciate you coming on. And I wanted to just kick things off. You know, we've been doing a series of co-pilot episodes. Right. And I know you're on the front lines with AI and Copilot. I just wanted to kick it off saying Happy New Year, and I wanted to get your thoughts on AI and adoption of Copilot in the organizations that you work with.
Well, Curtis, it's great to be back on the podcast. Thank you for inviting me back. And happy 2025 to the team here and everybody watching. You know, I think it's an exciting time for AI and Copilot. I think that there was a lot of talk through 2024 that AI was overhyped. I disagree with that. I think that it was misapplied. I think that there was expectations of people who didn't fully understand how this tool, and it is a tool, how it works and what use cases it should be applied to. And like any technology tool, if you just kind of throw it at everything and don't really understand how it's going to work, your results may not be as exciting as you would like. And so I think we saw a lot of that in 2024, but I'm very optimistic that those learnings are going to mean as we move into 2025, I think organizations are figuring it out or hopefully talking to other experts like yourselves and other people in the industry who have figured it out. And so we'll see better application of AI and specifically Copilot in 2025.
Yeah, that's a really good summary, and I've seen that myself. And I think there was so much hype around AI initially. Like you said, people were trying to apply it to a whole swath of use cases where generative AI wasn't really well suited for. Right. And like any new technology that comes to comes to market, it has bumps along the road. Of course, there was the hallucination problems, which has gotten a lot better. But I think what's exciting for me on the Microsoft side, and I think you're seeing the same thing, Kevin, is the whole Copilot story is maturing, and then those use cases are getting better defined, and you're actually seeing people get more value from it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that that's the case. I mean, I think we're still at the early kind of stages of that. I think a lot of the return on investment discussions, are a lot focused on saving people's time, and that's great, but it's not clear what the people do with that extra time. And if we're perfectly honest, like Microsoft makes things pretty much as confusing as possible in terms of their naming and their licensing. Just today, Microsoft 365 Copilot Business Chat, I think is what they're calling it, or Copilot Chat was announced as free. So there's another tier of licensing. So, I think we're going to sort it out through this year, but I think it's gonna take some time. But I would say optimistic, but more I'm hopeful that with kind of effort, we're going to see some good kind of, returns on the investment in Copilot and AI in general.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think, I think this year it's going to be a lot more around understanding the noise and filtering it out so that organizations can help better understand and utilize it, right? Because you were saying, like, there's so many things that are happening. Along with, I think one of the big announcements last year, late last year, was, the Copilot agents and being able to, deploy them in multiple locations. We had a couple episodes on that. So a lot of people are thinking that maybe this is going to be the Agentic AI world, like this year. And that's the first time I really heard that word, to be honest with you. How would you define sort of that, like what that is, and like what do you foresee like organizations using, agents and in I guess the way that they work?
Yeah, it's interesting because this agentic term, it comes up in philosophy a lot, which is like around like taking action as opposed to like thinking about something, right? So, and that is a good thing. Like, so agents, is really around, like we started with Gen AI, you'd ask questions, say, hey, could you do this? Could you plan a trip? Could you create a chart? This agentic AI or AI agents, the idea is, and it's like Copilot has been promoted to being a pilot. It used to be like the human in the loop, but now the idea is, okay, maybe there's a human in the loop, but there's certain things when certain types of emails come in, ideally this AI agent could just actually say, hey, this is something I can handle. Don't worry about it, Kevin. I got you. I'll take care of it. I'll respond. I'll do it in an intelligent way based on rules that you've set up when you set up the agent and grounding information, um, based on the organization and respond to it, right? So I think that this is the hope, because if you can take things from the workflow off of particular individuals. And I think the idea is take the mundane kind of repetitive tasks and move those over to an AI agent, like you might move over to, an assistant, a human assistant, but now it's a digital assistant. That really could drive some great return on investment. So I think that everybody is talking about, agents. I think it really was Salesforce came out with Agentforce, which caused Microsoft to come out with Copilot 2.0. And, everybody then, all the other vendors came out with their agent story. So I think that this is a maturing story. Everybody has promised great, kind of generally available tools in 2025. But, I think it's going to roll out over time in the year. But it's certainly exciting if you can understand your workflows and then create an AI agent. But once again, like all technology, first and foremost, you have to actually understand your business process, and that takes some work. It's not just like this magic AI technology comes in and solves all the problems.
Do you foresee, like, some just maybe off the top of your head, or some people that you've been speaking with around some of the use cases that they would use these agents sort of within their organizations? I know that you have to sort of understand your whole business process and how do you I guess automate it, right? Because there's previously you could do a lot of that stuff in Power Automate where it was
Right.
scheduled, stuff like that. Now this is a little bit more interactive when things are happening. Do you see, like, maybe you could comment on some of the use cases that you're maybe hearing or maybe foresee that organizations would use this?
Yeah, I think that, so this is a logical extension from, Gen AI does a great job of understanding intent. So you write this nice thing like, hey, I need to travel to Montreal next week for some client meetings, and I'd like to get there Monday morning, and I'd leave Thursday evening, and then it says, hey, in the past it could say, hey, here's the flights, and it does a good kind of super powered search and what have you, maybe, and looking at whatever your regulations, your corporate standards are on whether you get to fly economy or business class, depending on the duration of the trip and those kinds of things. The agentic part is now that you say, hey, fantastic, go book it. And like these use cases are, hey, book my time off. You ask HR, can I take time off for this particular case? And it says, yes, you're eligible for 10 days as whatever. And then you say, hey, could you book this? And so I think it's really completing the loop as opposed to just being like a super powered search agent. Like those, I think initially it's internal because there's less risk if it's, create an IT ticket or an HR, do something, less risk if it's internal. But, to be clear, the challenge is, it's like those systems still have to be connected, and that's still a bunch of work from an integration perspective, right? Like, if you say, hey, go do this, like the agent, Copilot, has to be connected into your HR system or your travel system or your, whatever other system. And I think non-programmers kind of underestimate the complexity of doing that particular integration work. But the idea is that the agents over time are integrated so you can inquire, and then if they give you the right answer, you can say go execute, and then ideally for kind of mundane or repetitive things, they can just know what you like and just kind of both respond without even involving you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kevin, do you think based on like some of the expectations that people had around AI last year, and then this wave of agents and automation kind of coming into this year, and you kind of started to talk about some of the pieces, but like, is this going to increase a new like expectation or increase risks and challenges as everyone thinks that, hey, now agents could do everything I was expecting to have done last year, and now maybe jumping into kind of these automation processes and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great question, Michael. I do think that the vendors in general, they want to promote the best possible case. And so I think we're seeing, marketing certainly shining a spotlight on these, the use cases where they're working perfectly. And I think that, so as part of that, I think that we're likely to see an agent expectation gap in 2025. I think it will be commonplace that we all have our own agents that both in the personal sphere and the business sphere are taking care of things, and they, we've built up some rules so they're doing things in a way that we're comfortable with. But certainly in 2025, I think that it's going to be an experimental year with respect to agents. And I would encourage everybody, for sure, like whatever platform, if you're using Copilot, go into Copilot Studio, figure out how it works. The whole idea of agents kind of in the optimistic view is that it doesn't take a programmer. It's that everybody can easily, through natural language, explain what you're trying to do, and in a way create an agent that then services your particular needs. So I think everybody should experiment, and through that, they're going to learn kind of the risks or where they don't meet up the expectations, and they will get things wrong occasionally. And so that's why, certainly start internally, like don't unleash an agent on your high value customers to start. That's probably a bad use case to start. But yeah, so I do think that the risk profile increases partly because there's a lot of misunderstandings around how Gen AI works and, in general. And I mean, through my writings or through discussions, kind of with other experts such as yourselves, I think it's important for us to kind of try to explain like how some of this works. It's not magic, but it is very different than kind of declarative programming, which was easier to test in the past.
And it's interesting because Microsoft's also pairing, and maybe not just Microsoft, but pairing some of these agents with like pay-as-you-go options. So it's like you can try, out of the gate maybe at a low cost, but if that model might not scale well, and like who's, planning and building budgets around, kind of this unknown is going to be interesting for 2025.
Yeah, you bring up a great point because like Microsoft has recently said that they've invested in this fiscal year, and their fiscal year is kind of like halfway through, that they've invested $80 billion in AI infrastructure. And so obviously, if you make an investment of $80 billion, I imagine you'd expect some level of return. And, this new announcement that this Microsoft 365 Copilot chat is free for everybody, it's got a bunch of asterisks, and one of the ones you bring up is there's consumption billing around the agent piece. So obviously Microsoft would love everybody to try these agents, fall in love with them, and then it's connected to your Azure subscription, and then do kind of the consumption billing piece. So yeah, there's obviously there's a bit of an unbounded liability. I mean, you can control it. Let's be clear. You can set parameters inside of Azure and control the budgets or whatever. But I think, Microsoft is trying to figure out how to get people interested in this and what people are willing to pay for. And it's not just Microsoft. I think everybody's trying to sort this out. So it's like, hey, try a little bit of this and hopefully you get I don't know if I want to say addicted, but you find value in it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Which leads into the next question. I mean, we're primarily obviously an M365 focused podcast, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't speak to you about what others are doing, because you're in touch with not just what Microsoft does, but with all the competitors as well. So, I mean, maybe spend a bit of time talking about what you're seeing from other vendors and with respect to AI, especially around. I think things have kind of shifted over to become a bit of a competition. And you saw that Microsoft obviously pivoted from early days of Copilot, where it was just limited and there was lots of cost, and now things are becoming free, and there's announcements coming fast and furious as well, but with changes in the Microsoft Copilot space.
Yeah, no, a great point. I mean, I think as much as organizations are experimenting to see how they get value from this, I mean, I think the vendors are experimenting to see how they kind of extract value and drive revenue from this. And there's been very different approaches, right? Like, so you have like Zoom with Zoom AI Companion. Zoom has always been about simplicity. I would say in terms of features, they try to keep things simple, but also from a licensing perspective. So they've said, hey, any paid license, you get Zoom AI Companion at no additional cost. That's a similar approach that Cisco WebEx took. And WebEx, I'm going to say they're focused on experience. They've got their AI assistant that does meeting summaries and a bunch of things, a little less powerful, but I think that because they try to keep things kind of experience, so they don't want to. Microsoft's all about like 3 different ways to do the same thing, and both Zoom and Cisco try to provide one way that's a little more clear. I think one of the things that Zoom is doing that's interesting is they actually connect. If you use Zoom AI Companion, you can connect it into Outlook Exchange. And now Zoom AI Companion can do things that Copilot can do, like, hey, summarize the emails that Dino sent me last week, or when's my next meeting with Habib? And it has access to your calendar if you provided that. So that's kind of interesting. I think we saw, Google today just made their Gemini. They had Google Workspace, and Gemini was their AI tool. They priced it pretty much similar to Copilot, $30 per user per month. Just today, they said, hey, as of the end of January, you no longer have to pay for it. We're including it, for any of the paid plans. So just like Cisco WebEx, just like Zoom. And so now Google's joined that. And interestingly, in the same day, Microsoft announced, well, it's not that Copilot for All is free, but this Copilot chat version is free. So, certainly I think there's a lot of competition, and ultimately I think AI is going to become an expected component. I've had colleagues that say it'll be like electricity, but I think that that's a bad analogy, right? Because if my lamp is powered by electricity, I don't care if it's coal-powered, hydroelectric, nuclear-powered. I mean, it powers the lamp the same way. I think all of the platforms, will have AI, but it's not going to be exactly the same. I think that, it's not going to be enough to make you move platforms. You're not going to say, hey, I'm a Microsoft shop. I'm going to abandon Microsoft to move to, Google Workspace because their AI is better. But I think that for new organizations, there is going to be some competitive, differences. And of course, beyond the platforms, there's hundreds of startups who are saying, hey, I can do this specific thing better. Maybe you're in a vertical industry, maybe you're healthcare, maybe you're legal, maybe you're manufacturing. I think we're going to see a lot of plugins that do it better than the generic, right? So I think it's a really exciting time. It's a confusing time for sure for organizations, because licensing is complicated, doing the math and figuring out where you're going to get value is complicated. But ultimately, I find it super exciting, because if you do the work and do the analysis, I think, you as an organization can outpace your competitors. And it is clear to me that 5 years from now, if you're not an AI focused organization, then you're probably either not going to be in business, or your competitors, using and leveraging AI effectively are going to be, have done so much better than your organization.
Yeah, that's well said. And a common quote out there is, "It's not AI that will take your job; it's someone who knows AI will." And I like to apply that at the corporate level, right? So it's companies that really know how to utilize AI that will probably succeed in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's well said, Curtis.
Yeah. Those are some fantastic insights, Kevin. Before we wrap up, I think you're presenting at CommsV next, right?
Yeah, so first off, in March, I'm at Enterprise Connect, and I've got 2 sessions, and cross your fingers, and because I've got one that's like how to leverage Teams and Copilot, and it's like, since it changes every week, it's hard to, I think they want the slides, I don't know, at the beginning of February, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but my slides, if I give them to you in February, by March 16th when it starts, they're all going to be out of date. So I've got that session. And the second session at Enterprise Connect is getting the most of your AI assistant. And that's kind of to Dino's question. That's a much broader look at, hey, what does your AI assistant do? And really, it's not so much saying my assistant is better than your assistant, but it's like, what are the key things to know to get the most out of whatever platform you're using? And that is the CommsV Next session as well. It's more about, hey, even though CommsV Next is very Microsoft focused, I really think that even if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, I mean, if you're a vendor or organization, it makes sense to understand what other people are doing, partly because borrow their good ideas, right? Because, I mean, Zoom and Cisco WebEx and Google, they're all doing some great things and have some great training. And some of that, if you're a Microsoft shop, you can kind of borrow and use those good ideas and continue to be a Microsoft shop. So that's the CommsV Next session. It's more, how does Copilot compare to kind of what else is out there? And I think it's good to know, especially if you have to if you're the IT pro that's defending some budget spend, it's good to have kind of a lay of the land.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you said it best. Just knowing what else is out there, how it's being applied, just helps you leverage your investment all the more. So,
absolutely.
Well said. Yep. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there, Kevin. Really appreciate you coming on again. Some fantastic insights. And yeah, for our viewers out there, if you want to know more from Kevin, check out his Enterprise Connect or CommsV Next sessions. So thanks again, Kevin, and hope to talk to you later in 2025 as this story unfolds.
Fantastic. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.